This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good. All right, good. So those online could say hello to those who are here in person. Right, but we don't see you guys. There we
Everybody,
go.
Hi.
Okay, so the plan is to finish up the last of the Ani Ma'amins, and then we will work on Purim. Okay? Purim is coming up on the horizon, and then after Purim, we will spend good time working on Pesach. Hello, Celine, how are you? Good. Okay, so on page 180 in the Art Scroll Sidurim, those who are following along with us, if not, most Sidurim have the 13 Ani Ma'amins of the Rambam, the 13, we call this principles of faith. So Ani Ma'amin, Be'emunah Shlema Shetiyeh Tchiyat HaMeitim, Be'et Sheyaleh Ratzon Me'et Habarei Barak Shemo V'yitaleh Zichro La'ad U'lenetzach Nitzachim. I believe with complete faith that there will be the resuscitation of the dead whenever the wish emanates from the Creator. Blessed is His name, exalted is His mention, forever and for all eternity. If we turn to the Amidah, right? So we know we've gone through the structure of the Amidah, of the prayer, of the Amidah prayer, which is the zenith of each of our prayers is the Amidah. We take the 3 steps back, 3 steps forward. You go to page 98, and we discuss the structure of the Amidah, how the Amidah always has the first 3 brachot, same first 3 brachot, always has the last same 3 brachot, and the middle brachot will depend, weekday, Shabbat, holiday, whatever it might be. So on page 98 in our Sidurim, we have the first bracha, and go to the bottom line there where it says in the English, God's might, in Hebrew it says Gevurot. This is the second of the blessings of the Amidah. Ata Gibor Liolam Hashem, you are eternally mighty. And then we list different manifestations of this power, of this strength of Hashem. Mechaye Meitim Ata, the resuscitator of the dead, you are. Rav Lahoshia, abundantly able to save. And then we list other things. In the winter, we list on page 100, 101, Mashiva Ruach. We're listing other manifestations of this Gevura, of this strength. Mashiva Ruach, the winds blow, the rains come down. It's supposed to start sometime tomorrow. Has it started already?
yeah, it started raining.
Sprinkle, okay. Don't forget to close your windows of the car. We get spoiled here in California. He sustains the living with kindness. Once again, resuscitates the dead with great compassion. Noflim supports those who have fallen, heals those who are sick, releases those who are bound. And who maintains his faith. Lishene afar, to those who are asleep in the dust. Who is that? Mechaye Meitim. Once again, the same idea. Michamocha, who is like you, Baal Gvurot, of all that strength. Umi Domelach, who is similar to you, Melech, the king, Meimit. Umechaye, who brings to death and brings to life. Umatzmiach Yeshua. So the order is not that he gives life and then death. He gives death and then he gives life. Umatzmiach Yeshua, and causes salvation to sprout. In case we haven't gotten the message yet. And and you are faithful to lachayot meitim, to resuscitate the dead. Blessed are you, Hashem, Mechaye HaMeitim, who resuscitates the dead. Pretty clear that we believe in this concept. This concept is, it's not like these zombie movies that people watch and all these shows. Back in my day, there was Night of the Living Dead. That was a movie. Now I think it's on every night. There's another a series that's on. Huh? The Walking, the Last of Us, The Walking Dead. Right? That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the time post Mashiach, after the Messianic times, when the time of the ultimate reward, when this world will be rebuilt in a different fashion, in a Garden of Eden fashion, and then we will return to the state that we were in the Garden of Eden, which was a super spiritualized body with a soul that was even far beyond that. And that is the time for the ultimate reward that people who have earned it, who are deserving, will receive. And the understanding is, so when a person dies, and we talk about the world to come, we talk about Gan Eden, the souls in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, that is all an interim stage. And that is what we call the Olam HaNefashot, the world of the souls. And that is where the souls go and they get revved up through their closeness with God. The bodies go into the ground and they decompose. But 1 second, they were faithful partners through life. Every good thing that we did, each of you who came here tonight, and yes, even though it didn't come here tonight, but turned on your computers, it was a joint effort of body and soul. The body might have said, I just want to stay home and go to sleep. I want to stay home and watch a movie. So the body and soul together, every good thing that we do is a combination of body and soul together. So why is it that the soul should be basking in heaven and the body should be rotting in the ground? Because that is an interim step. And the body needs to decompose in the ground to be rebuilt. Had Adam and Eve not sinned, then that point of dveikus, of closeness with God, could have happened with their body and soul. Once they sinned, then they became degraded. The world became degraded. This world can no longer be the place for that union, that dveikus, that oneness, that coming so close to God. And therefore there needs to be the world rebuilt in a way that it is fitting for that. And we need to be rebuilt in a way that is fitting for that. And an older man, Rav Shifrin was his name, when I was a much younger man, when I lived in Israel. And his brother was one of the four who had the task of digging up the body of the Vilna Gaon, a great tzaddik, a great tzaddik of the 18th century, because they were building a highway that was going to go through the Jewish cemetery. And they had the task of digging up what they thought would be the bones of the Vilna Gaon, to move them to a place that would not be tractored and torn apart with all the tractor work and construction work. And when they came to the body, they found that he was lying there with rosy cheeks, like a person who had just laid down to take a nap. This is what I heard from the brother of the one who did it. And all four of those individuals passed away that year. Whatever reason, right? The way I like to understand that is that they had done such a kindness for this great tzaddik that there was no longer any point for them to continue on in this world. They were all ready to enter the highest levels of the next world. That's how I'd like to understand it, but what do I know? Okay? But this is what I heard from the brother of the person who did it. But typically, the bodies need to decompose in order to be rebuilt and then have their ultimate sechar. So we're not talking about coming out of the graveyards and marching down the 405, that's not what we're talking about, what you've all seen on TV. We're talking about a time of incredible union with God when the two partners, the body and soul, get together. And the question that's often asked, and what I answer is, I don't know, but I can offer a possibility. We believe in the idea of Gilgul. Gilgul is reincarnation. We don't believe in a steady loop of reincarnation as in a Dalai Lama belief that it keeps coming back, keeps coming back. Ultimately, the reward is that devekus, that closeness, that coming to that clinging to God. But it could be that along the way, we do have to come back for unfinished business along the way. So if that's the case, people ask, so then which body gets up? Which body reunites with this soul that might have had a number of iterations down here? And I don't know. But my conjecture is that we're asking that question based on our overemphasis on our physical self. Meaning, no one asks the question, will I be wearing this zipper fleece that I like to wear in the winter? Or will I be wearing a pullover sweater? Or will I be wearing my gray suit or my... No one asked that question. Why? Because it's a garment. Who cares about the garment? So ultimately, when we recognize who we are, assuming we've all been here before, so we're going to look back at a number of garments that we've worn. That's what the body is, a number of garments. Which garment will we wear at that time? Probably the one that looks best on us. I'm not talking about push-ups, right? But I'm telling you the one that we did the best work with is what I would imagine. Yes, Marty.
One question and 6 parts.
Okay.
No, so it's hard to understand, like, if your soul is retired and in close proximity to God, you did your mitzvahs, Rabbi H said once, he said, someone asked him if everyone...
Rabbi H?
At H.
Rabbi H.
Someone asked the Rabbi once if everyone goes to Shemayim, and he said, yeah, everyone goes, but some people get better seats.
Okay.
But so let's assume you're up there, assume you're hanging out, and then you're already in close proximity, you're already in this soul space. It's a very Jewish idea that the time of Mashiach is a time when the planet we live on is transformed into something which is, I think, almost unique in the different religions. It might not be completely unique, but it feels somewhat unique. And so help us understand, like, what changes between like this and that time.
Okay.
And then get to some other point downstream, which is like, where is this principle of faith actually come from in Judaism?
Okay. So there are many different looks and descriptions of the messianic times. And that is why our understanding is when it happens, we will understand how all of these often seemingly conflicting views are all in sync. But in general, the Mashiach is going to come and bring the world up to a certain level. And then, once the world has been brought up to that level, then Techiyat HaMeitim will be a stage that comes afterwards. So yes, Mashiach will deal with the world, with those who are alive, with this world, bringing the level up, that everyone will recognize, Yakiru V'yedu Kol Yoshvei Tevel, the whole world will recognize and understand. And then that's why it's number 12 and 13 in the Rambam's principles. This is what will come afterwards at a certain point. Exactly how, what? Couldn't tell you. Okay?
Where's the resurrection?
So the Gemara Sanhedrin goes through a number of hints in the Torah that of this idea of the resurrection, which, as we said, is such a basic principle of Judaism that, it's not that, well, some people have a special prayer. It's in the Amidah, right? There's only one Amidah that we have, whether you're Ashkenaz, Sfard, you name it, right? There's only one Amidah that we have, and that second bracha is the bracha of Tchiat HaMeitim, right? We say there are a number of hints that the Gemara works through. We say in the Shema, for example, look on page 92. The two lines from the bottom of this is the last verse of the second parsha of the Shema, quoting, of course, from the Torah in Devarim, in Deuteronomy chapter 11. Lama'an yirbu yemechem, in order that we will have the prolong your days. V'imei v'nechem, and the days of your children. Al ha'adama, on the land. Asher nishba Hashem labotechem, that God swore to your ancestors. Latet lahem. It doesn't say latet lachem, to give that land to you. But God swore to the forefathers to give the land lahem, to them. But they're died. They're dead. They're dead. Right? That's one of the indications of Tchiat HaMeitim. We say every day in the davening, we quote what we just read in Parshat B'Shalach on page 78. Az Yashir Moshe V'nei Yisroel. Yashir is in the future. Right? Az Yashir. So the English has a nice little workaround. Then Moses and the children of Israel chose to sing this song. But what does Yashir mean literally? They will sing this song. Besides their singing it then, they will sing this song at the future ultimate redemptions. So the Gemara works through different hints on the Torah that deals with this. But once again, this is not, a fringe. This is a Hasidic view. This is a Kabbalistic view. This is, the Rambam was one of the great rationalists, right? This is the Rambam writing. This is the Amidah of every single Amidah that we ever say. This is the second blessing of the Amidah. Okay. So,
Rabbi,
yes.
may I ask a question about Ezekiel 37 and the reference to the resurrection of the dead? Is that part of what we're talking about, or it was the dry
No. The dry bones of Ezekiel, right? That was, right, either something that he did there or a vision that he had then, and that was to show us that there will be, and that was also a message about that with the destruction of the temple, that we will come back, right? And those bones that seem to be dried out have the capacity to come back. Yes, Victor.
What about the book of Daniel, chapter 12? Talk about the dead coming from.
Yes, there are many such references. Yes. But the point that's very important to make is this is not, the Breslover Hasidim, or this group or that, this is basic. This is, you can't get more basic than in the first three brachot, the first three blessings of the Amidah.
Yeah, Rabbi.
Yes.
Were there heretical sects of Judaism that didn't believe in Techiyat Hameitim?
Well said. There were heretical sects of Judaism.
Right? Like
Exactly.
there were
Exactly.
those that didn't believe in it, but
Exactly.
they're not mainstream.
Exactly. Again, we can't get more mainstream than the second blessing, maybe the first blessing, right, of the Amidah. But that's basically as mainstream as we get. Okay. With that, let us go to Purim. Okay. So today tonight and tomorrow is the first day of the month of Adar. Okay? 2 weeks later, on the 14th of Adar, we have the holiday of Purim. Okay? Purim and Hanukkah are the two rabbinic holidays that we have. Each one of them is aligned with one of the three regalim, the three pilgrimage holidays. Hanukkah, the rededication of the Beit HaMikdash of the temple, is aligned with Sukkot. Okay? Sukkot was when we first started to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle, and the clouds of glory returned after the sin of the golden calf. Okay. Purim is aligned with Shavuot, with the giving of the Torah. The pasuk there says, is everybody well familiar with the Purim story? Okay, right? Right. Let me just encapsulate it, and I strongly urge everybody to read through Megillat Esther. Megillat Esther, we have it in our Chumashim, and it's in our stone Chumash on page 1252. Okay? And Megillat Esther is the story of King Achashverosh, the king who was then king of much of the world, 127 provinces. This is the Median Paras Madai, Persian Median Empire. And this took place historically. When did this take place? Jewish history, when did this take place?
During the second, or before the second.
Good. Before the second temple, during the 70-year Babylonian exile, after the destruction of the first temple, before the building of the second temple. And Achashverosh made a massive party. According to the sages, what was he celebrating?
He was celebrating because he thought their redemption had already passed when it was promised. So he thought the promise was false and they were never going to.
Beautiful. That everyone knew about the prophecy of 70 years. The question is, when do we count the 70 years from? Belshazzar calculated, an earlier king calculated the 70 years. The prophet in the book of Daniel tells about this. He miscalculated. Now, being that he thought the 70 years were up, he thought he could take any of the vessels from the temple and the garments of the Kohen Gadol with impunity. And he took those, and the expression, the handwriting on the wall, comes from that chapter in Daniel. There was handwriting on the wall that said, Mana, mana, takal paras, vessels, vessels you've taken, you're going to be destroyed. He was murdered that night. Achashverosh said he miscalculated. I'll make a better calculation. He made his calculation. And when the 70 years were up, he threw this fantastic party for everyone. At this party, he wanted Vashti to come, his wife, Queen Vashti, to come unencumbered by any garments, right, in order to show off her beauty to all. She refused to come. She was put to death. He sought out another woman to replace. Esther, the Jewish woman who would not tell of her nationality, was chosen, became the queen. Once there was the refuah, then there is the machla. We say Hashem prepares the refuah, the healing, before the malady, before the illness. If you have time, remind me to share with you guys a story that I shared at IHDS today, just about that idea, how the refuah is there before the makkah, the healing is there before the makkah. The makkah, the plague, the malady was Haman rising to power and convincing Achashverosh to set a date for the annihilation, the murder of every single Jew. This was the first final solution that we know of. And Mordechai, who was Esther's uncle, Mordechai finds out what this plan is, tells Esther, you have to go intercede on our behalf. Esther first is hesitant to go. He says, if you don't go, the Jews will be saved. We are an eternal people. we will be saved. But if you don't use your opportunity to do it, then you will be down for all generations in disgrace. She says, fast. Everyone should fast for 3 days, and as such, I'll go to Achashverosh. After 3 days of fasting, she goes to Achashverosh. Obviously, she's not looking all that good after 72 hours of not eating, but she was not putting her faith in her beauty. She was putting her faith in God helping her in her mission. She comes to Achashverosh. She says, what is it that you want? And she says, I want to have a private party with just you, me, and Haman. Right? He agrees. They have that party. Right? At the party, he says, what is it that you want? And she says, my request is, one more time, tomorrow, let's have another meeting. Me, you, and Haman. Haman is feeling great. This is amazing. Okay? And he goes home, but everyone's bowing down to him, as is the rule, except for Mordechai refuses to bow down. He's all upset. And his wife says, why are you so upset? She said, this Mordechai guy won't bow down to me. So the wife says, well, listen, why don't you prepare a gallows and go to the king early in the morning and tell the king about this Mordechai dude, get him hung, and that way you'll go to the party, you look out from the party, you'll see the gallows, you'll see Mordechai hanging from the gallows, you'll be at peace. He says, great idea. That night the king can't sleep. And he's wondering, according to Gemara, he's wondering, what is it that she wants? What's she going to ask of me? Now, if your kids are going to ask something of you, you want to find out first so you can kind of offer them something a little bit less, right? Instead of getting walloped with the biggie, right? Well, I already got you this, right? So he thinks, let me find out. They read the book of Chronicles, and it comes out in the book of Chronicles that there was these two of his workers who plotted to kill him, and Mordechai found out. Mordechai had saved his life. He asked what was done for Mordechai, and they said nothing at all. He said, I better take care of Mordechai quickly. He says in the morning, who's in the courtyard? Haman's in the courtyard. Send him in. He says to Haman, what should be done to the person that the king wants to honor? Haman thinks, who does the king want to honor more than me? So Haman, what does he do? He basically gives a whole wish list of the coronation of the king with just him replacing the king. The horse that the king rode when he was coronated, the garments he wore, and that's what should be put onto the person thinking of himself in there, and they should call before him. This is what should be done to the person that the king wants to honor. Achashverosh says, great idea. Do all of that for Mordechai. Right? And Haman now has to lead Mordechai through the streets. He finally makes it to the party. And Esther says, the king says, what is it that you want? Esther says, I want my life. I want my nation. I want my people. Right? Who's trying to harm you? Haman Arazeh, Haman. And then one of the officers speak up and says, there's the gallows that Haman prepared for Mordechai, the one who saved your life, your majesty. And the king says, Tuluhu alav, hang him on that. Haman was hung, and the day that had been set for the destruction of the Jews, which was the 13th day of Adar, became the day that we were able to fight against our enemies and be victorious. And we did that on the 13th day of Adar. That's the day before Purim. That comes out a week from this Monday. And we fast on that day. It's known as Ta'anit Esther. Why do we fast on that day? Not because Esther fasted 3 days. Esther fasted 3 days months before. But when we would go into battle, we would fast because we would recognize that it's not the strength of our arms that brings us victory, but it is our closeness with God and God's intervention. So we too fast on that day. And then the Jews celebrated on the 14th day of Purim, of Adar. That is Monday night, Tuesday. That is our day of Purim. Then, so we too will celebrate on that day. And the Megillah goes on to say that the Jews of Shushan, they needed 2 days of battle to take care of all of their enemies. And therefore they fought. Everyone else fought on the 13th. and rested, celebrated on the 14th. They fought on the 13th and 14th, rested, celebrated on the 15th. That's why the 15th, next 2 weeks' time, Wednesday, is called Shushan Purim. And if you live in Shushan, or if you live in a walled city like Jerusalem, then you celebrate Purim on the 15th day. And in Israel, you have all of these halachic questions. If you started off outside Jerusalem, ended up inside, and started out inside, which day of Purim? Both. How do you work that? Okay, that gets into some complicated halachic questions, which does not apply to us here in Irvine. Okay, so Purim is our celebration of that victory. But Purim is a very, very important holiday, and there are 4 mitzvot of Purim, which we'll go into soon. But Purim is a very important holiday to the point that the sages say all the holidays will become eclipsed by the future redemption, but Purim will continue to be celebrated. Interesting. What is so unique about Purim? Well, if you read through the book Megillat Esther, you'll see what is unique about that is that God's name is never mentioned throughout. We say that when it says Ha-Melech, the king, as opposed to King Achashverosh, when it says Ha-Melech, the king, that's a reference to God. But an open writing of God's name is not written there. And the reason is very important, and with that we'll gain an understanding and why this is the holiday which will continue for all time through the Messianic era. This was the time at the end of the 70 years. This was the time of the closing down of the era of prophecy. And therefore, the Jews felt somewhat adrift, right? Are you still out there, God? Right? Is there anybody out there? Right? Is God still involved with us or not? Has he just vacated? Fascinatingly, Rav Soloveitchik says a beautiful, beautiful idea. The men of the Great Assembly established our set Amidah that we just discussed before, the second blessing at length. They established the set Amidah at the time of the close of prophecy. As if to say, the conversation must continue, the communication must continue. If God, you're no longer speaking to us, well, guess what? 3 times a day, what are we going to do? We're going to speak to you. The lines of communication have to stay open. And we can compare it, an older brother saying to a younger brother, let's say a parent says, listen, there are times that as parents, we need to not see certain things, right? Or act like we didn't see certain things. If we see it, we have to respond, and it might not be in anyone's best interest for us to respond, so it's better not to have seen it. So at a time when we dipped below this prophecy level, it was better for God not to be speaking directly to us, because that is a tremendous responsibility. And if we're not owning up to that responsibility, then it's going to be to our detriment. So God had to step back. But the big brother says to the little brother, listen, if dad's not calling you, make sure you call him. You've got to keep on reaching out. And that's the tefillah. But we were somewhat adrift and feeling perhaps we have been dismissed, cut off. So the whole Purim miracle, Megillat Esther, is to show us, even though God's name is not written explicitly, he is as intimately involved as he has always been, but now it is in a behind-the-scenes manner, as opposed to in an open plagues, 10 plagues, splitting of the sea, manna from heaven, water from a rock, etc., etc., etc. But his involvement is still the same. When the Messianic times come, so then the miracles and all that will take place then will eclipse all of the other miracles. But then we're going to be able to look back at all that has transpired in Jewish history for thousands of years now. And we're going to be able to see how Hashem's hand was involved in everything, taking care of us, bringing us forward. That which seemed to be the greatest of tragedies, we'll be able to understand then how that was God's loving kindness in a way that we can't even imagine how that can be today when we are here in this world looking back on events that the Jewish people have gone through. But that is a Purim view that we will then be having, recognizing God's hidden hand in all that has transpired. That is an understanding and explanation in the idea that Purim will be celebrated. That whole idea of Purim is how we will then be able to view the entire span of Jewish history. With this Purim view, seeing how Hashem's hands behind the scene were guiding all that we went through. Purim itself, there are 4 mitzvot that we have on Purim, and males and females are equally obligated in all of these mitzvot. One of them is a 1A and a 1B, that is hearing the reading of the Megillah, right? And it means hearing it in its entirety, word for word, okay? And that is read once at night and then again during the day. At night, we have everyone together. During the day, there is a reading early as part of the morning davening. That would be at probably about 7 or 7:15 in the morning, and then again in the afternoon before the Seudah. Oh, what's the Seudah? Let me explain. The 3 other mitzvot, so one of them is hearing the Megillah twice, night and then day. The other mitzvot are all Seudah, meal related, okay? Because the whole miracle started with that party, that meal of Achash Verosh, which then led to the death of Vashti, the installation of Esther, and then we had our person in place there to bring about this whole redemption. Okay, so one of them is to have a Purim Seudah, to have a festive meal on Purim. We'll be having one here, right? If you'd like to come, please do. Strongly recommend and RSVP to join so that we know that you're coming to this meal that we'll have over here. At the meal, typically a person is supposed to drink more wine than they usually do. For me, that's not all that much, okay? But a person is supposed to drink a little bit more because it was through, again, this whole Seudah, this whole meal, that the miracle ended up taking place. The other 2 mitzvot we said are meal related. One of them is mishloach manot, which literally means sending portions. And the mitzvah is to send at least 2 food portions to one person. Typically, we send to a lot more than that. Beth Jacob at the shul, we have a Mishloach Mana program that you donate to the shul and have your name. You say which name, all right? And basically, everyone in the shul receives a Mishloach Mana package, and it will have there a card and a list of all the people who donated towards that person receiving Mishloach Manot. That is a beautiful thing to do. It is a beautiful community builder. It's raising money for our youth, and it's great. Everyone receives something. It's wonderful. In addition to that, you should make sure to send to at least one person 2 food items. A mistake that people often make is that it needs to be 2 different brachot, 2 different blessings. That is incorrect. The Shulchan Aruch talks about 2 types of meat, right? It all has the same blessing. The idea is to send 2 mishloach manot. Mishloach, sending manot is plural, portions. Ish l'reyehu, a person to their friend, right? So you need to fulfill the mitzvah, you need to send to at least 1 person. So in addition to Natalie and I, joining in the mishloach manot of the shul and sending to people, we'll also send to at least 1 other person, okay? If there is a person that you've had the idea of mishloach manot is to help build the camaraderie. If there is someone that you've had some tense moments with, perhaps, so that's now, not that, oh yeah, I got from you. Does that mean you're angry, right? But right, it's a way to build up the camaraderie. So if there is someone that now I can't imagine any of us have had any run-ins with anybody, but just theoretically speaking, right? Rabbi never has any run-ins with anybody, right? Theoretically speaking, so it's a good opportunity to build friendships. Okay, so that is mitzvah number 3, mishloach manot, that needs to be done during the day of Purim. Also, as does the Seudah, needs to be during the day of Purim. Number 4 is, as the Megillah says, matanot, which means gifts, plural, le'evyonim, to poor, in the plural. So there one must distribute on Purim monetary gift to at least 2 people, right, who are in need. That gets a little bit tricky. So the way that is often done is that people give me the money to distribute, and I distribute that money on Purim itself to people who are in need. How much should be given? So there is no set amount, but the way it's normally understood is that this is food, seuda, meal related, right? Mishloach manot is to make sure that everyone can have a meal. I didn't mention that before. I said they're all meal related. We send food items to make sure that everyone could have a meal. We give out money to the poor to make sure that they can have a meal. Okay? So typically, what's the least that a person could get a meal for? It's like a bagel and a Coke.
Adjusting for inflation, $10.
Yeah, I would say somewhere between $7 and $10. So typically, we try to give between $15 and $20 is what we would give, right? What each person would give, and that way we know that it is we have fulfilled the mitzvah. Okay, yeah. So those are the 4 mitzvot of Purim. Any questions? Went through a lot over here. Yes, Mary.
Are you permitted to work on Purim?
Okay, good. So Purim is a day where, in terms of, it's not Shabbos, it's not Yom Tov, driving, electricity, you name it, there are no such restrictions, right? Can a person go to work on Purim? A person can go to work on Purim, right? Ideally, if it can be a busy day with delivering Shalach Manot, hearing the Megillah, getting ready for the Suda, having the Suda, that's great. If a person needs to go to work, one can and one should go to work, but to make sure to hear the Megillah, then before one goes to work in the morning, hear the night before, that's easy. And then at some point to make sure the Suda, it's on the calendar, what time it's called for over here. It's towards the afternoon, right? So to be back to have the Suda and to make sure we'll have baskets out in order to put money in from Mishloach from Matanot Levyonim. You want to do that in order that I can give it out on Purim Day itself. And and to send. So yes, if one can go to work and make sure to fulfill the other mitzvot. One other custom that we have is called the machatzit hashekel, the half shekel. If you notice, this past Shabbos was called Parshat Shkalim. We read about the half shekels that were donated to the Beit HaMikdash. So the way we do that custom is we'll have baskets with silver coins, half dollars, and you pick up the $3 and you say, this is as a remembrance of the half shekel that was given in the time of the temple. You put them back in and you redeem that with $1.50, right? The $3.50, and that you put it into a different basket we'll have over there. And then that once again will be distributed to, that actually goes for the shul. That doesn't get distributed to the poor, that goes to the shul. Okay?
Only for the men.
No.
For the Asher.
Women also machzit hashekel. Yes. Yes, Marty.
Could you just refresh us on the prophecy, the 70-year prophecy?
Yes.
Like, who was the prophet? What was the prophecy? And then there was a sub-story somewhere about how it relates to the building of the second temple, I think somewhere in
Yes,
there. And who
yes.
even the Kohen Gadol.
So let me get a Gemara 1 second.
If you have FOMO, you should not go to work.
I know,
You should come
right?
to shul.
I know. I actually don't have anyone scheduled yet. I had a client ask today, and then I was like, I told him, I was like, I'm gonna have to get back to you, though. I'll pencil you in for now. If anything, it's a half-hour client, so
Yeah.
I can see him whenever.
I remember having FOMO last year. But I worked at TVT, which is like a Jewish day school.
Oh, yeah.
So they had a bunch of events, but I was like, what's the shit? Like,
Yeah.
I know.
You got your costume picked
Some of
up?
our friends want to go out to
You got your
LA.
costume?
I don't, like, typically people like coordinate it with the Michelin money before sending, so it can be themed. with
Okay.
the gifts you're
The Navi Yirmiyahu says, Lefi Melot Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah 29. Lefi Melot Lebavel, when they will be fulfilled for Babylon. Shivim Shana, 70 years. Efkod Etchem. I will remember you. Okay? Now, to Bavel. So was that from the time of the ascent of Bavel into world power? Was that from the time of Nebuchadnezzar's reign? Was that right? At what point of Bavel is that? Another pasuk in Daniel chapter 9 is L'malot, when they'll be fulfilled L'charvot Yerushalayim, for the ruins of Jerusalem, Shivim Shana, 70 years. So those were the two prophecies, Jeremiah 29, Daniel 9. And the question was, when is it counted from? Okay? And there was a Pekida, there was this remembrance. That's when Korash said that we can start to build, but then it got stopped along the way. Okay? And then it was actually 70 years from the actual destruction of the first temple. That's when the second temple was built, and that was by Achashverosh's child, right? Darius, who allowed that to go ahead and be built. Okay. The story that I promised you guys of the Refuah Kodem Lamachala was that there was a person on the outskirts of New Jersey, the outskirts of the Lakewood area, who woke up in the middle of the night, was not feeling well, having problems breathing. Right? It didn't settle, so very quickly his wife called Hatzalah. Hatzalah is a Jewish volunteer ambulance, which we have in very Jewish areas. In that it's all volunteers. When the response time of the regular 911 could be 7, 8, 9 minutes, Hatzalah gets there within 2-3 minutes. Right? And anyone can call Hatzalah, Jewish or non-Jewish, right? So the wife called Hatzalah, and one of the Hatzalah guys, this is 3:00 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, took the call, and it's Rabbi Yoel Gold story. You guys saw this?
No, I saw this.
Oh, right. Took the call and said, yes, we'll be there. And 30 seconds later, they walk into the house with a very, very sophisticated heart monitoring, like a mobile EKG, which these ambulances normally don't have, right? They had it. They start to check the guy. Within a few seconds, he falls back. His eyes are rolling to the back of his head, right? And the EKG, the front EKG, right? Flatline, stopped, right? Guys, heart stopped, right? They quickly, with the unusual mechanism machinery they had there, they were able then to start working on him, shocked him. 30 seconds later, he's fine, talking. He knows who he is, knows where he is, and he's fine. Okay? That's the story, we think. How did they get there in 30 seconds? How did they have all of that unusual machinery? Well, days before, there was a kid in camp in the Catskills who was not feeling well and had a history. I forget all the details, had a history. And they wanted to send him to a nearby hospital. The parents called the child's doctor, and who said, no, don't send him to a hospital there. He's got to go to Chalk in Philadelphia. So Hatzalah then needed to transport this kid about a 4-hour drive from the Catskill Mountains, upstate New York. A lot of camps, Jewish camps are there, to Chalk Hospital in Philadelphia. Because this kid had heart issues, they loaded the ambulance with all of this much more machinery, heart machinery, than they normally travel with. They loaded it all up. They picked up the kid. They drove about 4 hours to get to Chalk Hospital. They finally get there. The child's okay, right? Delivered to Chalk Hospital. Now they need to go, right? They're exhausted. It's been a full day of this, right? So they start to travel. I guess they're going towards Lakewood. I don't remember all the details, right? I need to get off somewhere and get a few hours sleep. They're so exhausted, they missed their exit. Keep on going, keep on going, keep on going. We'll get the next exit. They missed the next exit. Finally, the third exit, they get off over there. And just then is where they get this phone call on the Hatzalah line, right, that we need an ambulance to this and this address. They check their GPS with 30 seconds from there. Let's just go. We'll just go. Instead of other guys having to get out of bed, get dressed, and start running in the middle of the night, we're already here. We'll just go. And that's how they were 30 seconds away with the right machinery for this person who, without that, it seems, would have died that night. He was dead. They shocked him back to life, right? He would have died that night. Had a regular ambulance come in the usual 5 to 7 minutes, it's amazing, 5-7 minutes response time, it would have been too late. But all this was set in motion while he was still asleep. Before he woke up and decided, all of this was set in motion, that this ambulance with the right machinery would be there, missing the exit, getting right off 30 seconds from his house. All of that was happening. That's the refuah kodem lemachala. That's the healing prior to the malady. As he's laying there asleep, everything's fine. Right? Little does he know that Hashem is moving the pieces to be right there when he needs to be saved, that he'll be saved. Wow. Now, it doesn't always work out exactly like that. But when it doesn't, we recognize that everyone's got a time to go, right? But this is the idea of Hashem's name, not in the Megillah. This is the hand of Hashem that is there throughout in a hidden way. But when we open up our eyes to see it, we call that hashgacha pratis, which is individualized divine providence. When we open our eyes to see that, then we could see it all around us. Okay, my friends. Good. Everyone could say good night. Open up your cameras, all you camera shy people.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye.
Thank you,
Good
Rabbi.
night.
There we go. Good night, everybody. Now we
Good
see you.
night. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
I
Again,
shared
next
some
Tuesday
links,
I'm
Rabbi.
away. The Tuesday after that, I'll see all of you, I hope, at the Purim Su'udah. And then we will pick up the week after that, getting ready for Passover. Okay?
I shared links inside of the WhatsApp group for the Purim Suda.
Thank
It would
you.
be very nice to have everybody there. Catering from Vivian Hots. The menu is
Nice.
going to be
Nice.
amazing. Good times.
Good. So
Please join
please
us.
share links for that and for Mishloach Manot also, Jackie.
I have both of them in the chat. If I could help
Okay.
anybody,
Good.
you know where to find me.
Good.
We
And
don't have
tomorrow
class
night,
next
having an
week.
excellent speaker here. Of those of you who haven't yet signed up, you could still sign up or show up at the door. It'll be a little more expensive at the door, but excellent speaker. So please do join us tomorrow evening. Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're all very welcome. Good night. Good night.